Now,
yeah, but I think you'll acknowledge that in this day and age, where anybody can be a blogger, and believe me, this story is a big story. You'll get any other media to listen to what you've got to say. Is this really an issue?
You know
you
what?
get to talk now, please.
You know what? It definitely is an issue. I mean, this is a criticism that's been put out there. Why don't we take a counter view response, to Mr. Steyn's article, have it, start up our own newspaper, have another magazine
Well, you
published,
don't have to do that.
newspaper.
You're here. I mean, there's any number of media outlets you can take advantage of.
Let's look at Maclean's, though. I mean, Maclean's is Canada's only national current weekly magazine. It has a readership of over 2.8 million people. We're concerned about Maclean's readership being exposed to an open debate on a very important issue.
Okay, but as far as I know, and this is just rules of journalism, I don't think anybody gives over their magazine without the right to edit to anybody.
And it's not about
Right?
giving over the rights to the magazine. I mean, what you have to understand is we went to that meeting with Maclean's as concerned Canadian citizens. I mean, we were taking issue with the abhorrent content of the article, and we essentially put forth what we considered to be a very reasonable proposal that they consider publishing a counter view response to to that specific article, especially in light of the fact that there were 22 other articles, like Karim just mentioned.
Did you read the piece, right?
Yes.
You read Mark's piece in Maclean's magazine.
Yes.
What was your initial reaction to it?
I think the initial reaction of the three of us, just as it was within the Islamic and Muslim community, the Arab community, a lot of other racialized minorities, was one of disgust. We've seen this kind of pattern before in our history in Canada. We've seen people try and put out objective facts as a dressed up form of racism. It was called the Yellow Peril in the 1940s when there was a concern over increased Asian immigration to parts of British Columbia, and there was a big sort of fear, and we were trying to set it up.
I understand, but this is going to sound a little strange, but I actually don't think he's worried about you three very westernized law students who are very much a part of the fabric of Canadian society. I think he's worried about the people who want to behead the Prime Minister. Would you agree with that?
No, I would actually completely disagree, because if you look at the article targets all Muslims collectively. The extract that I read to you, even there he's trying to undermine it. And you know what? There's one part in the article
the part you read out earlier talked about the people who are hot for jihad. He never said that's everybody. He said it's a significant portion.
No, he said enough Muslims share the basic
That's
objectives of terrorists, which is in a manner which casts suspicions on all of us as sharing the basic objectives of terrorists. And secondly,
why would you make the leap that casts aspersions on everybody? He's talking about
because no, he's not.
portion.
He's talking about it in that particular article, but in that particular extract. But if you look at the whole tone of the article, for instance, the part of the article says, age plus welfare equals disaster for you. Youth plus will equals disaster for whoever gets in your way. Islam has youth and will, Europe has age and welfare. When you use the term Islam, that refers to all Muslims. That refers to me, Maniza, and Nassim. Also, if you read on in the article, there's a quote where he jumps across the Atlantic Ocean. Remember that this article is being published by Maclean's in North America, so the readership is drawing conclusions about the Muslim population in Canada. Mr. Steyn in Maclean's magazine jump a few continents and a few oceans all the way to Libya, take a quote from Libyan dictator Colonel Gaddafi, where he allegedly says that the 50 million Muslims of Europe will turn it into a Muslim continent.
We put the quote up actually, just leading into you. Yeah.
So my point just is that what's being said is that if you want to, so what Mr. Steyn and Maclean's are saying is, if you want to form an opinion of Muslims in Canada, what you need to look at is what Colonel Gaddafi in Libya has to say. And this is actually a tactic which is very commonly used by Mark Steyn and Maclean's and the other people that they have.
Okay, can you, and let me go to Maniza on this. I want to try and keep equal time here. Can you at least allow for the fact that there appears to be a real problem, if not certainly with the majority of Muslims living in the West, then at least a significant minority?
I'm going to let you take that.
Sorry.
Okay, you pass
I'm
the
gonna
line.
You see, what I want to say is that even if there is a problem, right? Our point is that if you want to talk about that, that's fine. But what we do not understand is why Maclean's refuses to allow the Muslim community and other media organizations refuse to allow the Muslim community the opportunity to be part of that debate.
They didn't say you couldn't write a letter. They just said you can't be a columnist.
Actually, what they said was that they weren't prepared to publish any response. Just because, Steve, you mentioned earlier that we wanted them to give over editorial control. We've always asked for a mutually acceptable response. The question is, why is it that Maclean's, you see, because the model that's put out there is that the solution to harmful and hateful speech is more and better speech. You see, our complaints have illustrated that model doesn't work. If you want to have more and better speech, that's fine. That's what we're asking for. We're not saying that they need to shut him down or shut down anyone else who's providing opinions on Islam. We're saying if you want to make Islam and Muslims a topic of discussion, that's fine. But we, our community, wants to be part of that discussion. And we're being denied.
Hang on, Mark,
and
we're almost ready.
And we are being denied that opportunity. That's why we have taken Maclean's magazine to the Human Rights Commission and not Mark Steyn. That's another fabrication that he's put forth because he's not part of the human rights complaints that we filed.
And you know what? I do think that's an important point.
Hang on.
I do think that's an important point because, I mean, Mr. Steyn was on the Duffy Show just a couple days ago, and he made reference to the Ontario Human Rights Commission that was a statement that was issued just a couple weeks ago, and he says, you know, the OHRC is not going to be able to throw me and Maclean's into jail. And, you know, this is not about us versus Mark Steyn. I mean, it's taking attention away from the actual issue. And the issue, as Khurram said, is the right of the right for communities to participate in national dialogue on issues that affect
right
them.
now.
But not when looking
as a result of our complaints.
But that's
if we hadn't filed human rights complaints, CTV or The Agenda or the Globe and Mail and all the other newspapers wouldn't have been interested in this. Also, we haven't really been allowed in these papers to directly respond in the way that we would like. We've been allowed to talk about our human rights complaints.
You know what? For what it's worth, you are here on live television. Nobody is editing you. Nobody is, you know, chopping down what you're having to say. I frankly don't see how you are being censored by participating in this broadcast tonight.
Oh, we're not saying that you're the one who's censoring us. We're saying that it's Maclean's magazine who's censoring us. That's who our issue is with.
Nassim.
Essentially, we have always been requesting what your show is doing right now, which is to allow a different voice or the voice of the targeted group a chance to speak. And by turning to other media organizations and putting the onus on them to respond to, for us to respond to something that they didn't even print is unrealistic. And it's also not, it's not engaging Maclean's in their responsibility to be fair, to be balanced, to be what they put themselves out as an authoritative source of news. And so we're just, I don't think there's anything wrong in us trying to hold them accountable to their own standards or the standards of the journalism industry at large.
I don't think anybody would dispute that. You're certainly entitled to put everybody's feet in journalism to the fire. That's true. The question is methods. Are you not concerned that the approach that you've taken looks like you're trying to inhibit free speech in the country?
I don't think that that's the case, and I think it's important to give you a little bit of background information.
Sure.
I mean, in terms of why did we actually go to the commissions, it's not about hindering free speech. We weren't left with any other choice. As you very well know, we met with Maclean's. I mean, there's some differing, opinions as to what actually transpired at that meeting, but we were essentially told that they do not want to accept any sort of reasonable proposal. You know, Maclean's does not prescribe to any sort of press council. The Ontario Press Council, for instance.
So you didn't have that avenue available.
We didn't have that avenue. I mean, the Ontario Press Council, for instance, looks at media responsibility while still vigorously endorsing, you know, freedom of speech, and freedom of the press. We didn't have that option, so we had to go to the Ontario Human Rights Commission or the commissions, and these are legislative bodies that have been set up to look at these sort of human rights violations.
I want to be scrupulously fair about the time here because we did 15 minutes with Mark. I've done 15 minutes with you guys right now. Just a note to the control room, let's dispense with all this. I don't want to lose any time here. Can we just set up a chair and invite Mark to come over? Tina, if you would, thank you. Set up a chair right here in the studio.
Steve, we're going to hold
Mark,
you to your.
come on over.
We're going to hold you to your stance that you're not going to allow shouting on the show
let's make, first of all, just a minute.
Why am I sitting
First of all,
offshore here?
Mark,
So
first of all, welcome back to the broadcast. For those who've joined us
guys.
late,
Hello.
is this the first time that all four of you are actually meeting
yes, it is.
in person?
It is.
So you've never actually had a discussion about this before?
No.